All right, everybody, shalom, and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show, broadcasting live from Judea. That's right, live and from Judea. And the reason I'm saying that is because only just a few short hours ago, I landed with the whole family and all their accoutrements, all their luggage, landed in the land of Israel. And then after a really decent flight from Newark, New Jersey, and then came in and then did the COVID tests and came into quarantine, which even people vaccinated and with negative corona tests have to get quarantined. But I'm back at home and at my desk, and I am joined by Rav Mike Feuer. Rav Mike, thank you so much for joining us, and it's great to have you back on the show.
Oh, it's so great to have you back in the land, Yishai. I'm just trying to find, here we go. I wanted to share our live stream here.
Yes.
It's good to see you.
It's great to see you. It's great to be seen. And I want to tell you that I also want to say Shechianu, not a full Shechianu, but a kind of Shechianu, because I've been out for a month and I've had many various coffees. You know that I try very hard to also keep to Chalav Yisrael. So I'm out there, and
that's easy. Just drink it black, man.
Right. And I did that as well. Or I drank oat milk, and who knows what other kind of milk they have out there. And this is the first cup of coffee that I'm having at home that I made with my coffees, with my various things that I add into my coffee. And so I'm very excited, and I'm feeling it. I'm feeling my coffee going at the amount that a lot of coffees are also too strong for me, and I'm up on the roof, and I'm not, I'm just like, I can't handle it. This is the right coffee. So I want to say l'chaim, and I know you're a coffee lover, and you can understand.
I am.
Cheers, l'chaim.
L'chaim. There's no place like home. There's no place like home.
Now, right off the bat, there's no coffee like home coffee. And right off the bat, Zev Aber writes Empire, and he with question mark.
With the question
Empire
mark.
Here it's good, and that's because I wrote "Is Israel an empire?" And that was just shorthand for what I wanted to start talking with you about. I'm a pretty experienced traveler already, and I have learned to navigate the emotional stress of going between America and Israel.
It's a big one.
It's for a lot of people, it is very stressful. For example, for a religious Jew living in the diaspora where he wants to, let's say, stay and live, let's say Teaneck, New Jersey, but still not recognizing that the Holy Land is the Holy Land, coming here and seeing like a big, beautiful Israel is jarring, because you're like, well, I'm a Zionist, maybe I'm a religious Zionist, but I'm not in the land of Israel, nor do I really want to be, because I still like my Teaneck life, and that's where my parnasa, that's where my welfare, and my, what do we always say that word is? My livelihood is found, and my mom lives or something like that. And for an Israeli Jew who's like, let's say, a Zionist, but has family in America, you come there and you're like, wow, this country is well maintained. It has a lot of smart stuff, a lot of like, it doesn't have like a huge internal population, which is antithetical to the very idea of the country like we have here in Israel. And also they have this really worked out a political system with all of its troubles, but still, and people are nice and people are kind. And then there's the whole materialism aspect of it, which is like, wow, nice houses, nice grasses, everything is kind of orderly, and it just kind of hums along kind of in some ways. And then you're like, it's well groomed. It's properly groomed, I would say. It has good upkeep, which all places should have, but Israel sometimes lacks. And then you also sense that America is this giant country. You could drive, Route 80, where I drive a lot of times in New Jersey. This time again, goes all the way to San Francisco if you drive for 5 days. And it's a huge country with a lot of, and just because of that, a lot of freedom and also a lot of power in terms of its world and empire quality. Well, Israel is not that. It's a small country within let's say, an Islamic world, an Arab world, other empires, other would-be empires like Turkey, like Iran, who are in conflict with Israel sometimes. And so you when you're a traveler, okay, you end up you get these conflicted feelings. Now, a person like me, I can handle it because I've actually learned to detach and just to kind of take it easy. Like, okay, it is what it is. There's Israel, there's America, there's these tensions, these polarities, but I'm already more like easily I could it's almost like if a person knew how to drive on the left side of the street and the right side of the streets and became ambidextrous. I'm like ambidextrous when it comes to going to America, but seeing it through the eyes of my wife and my kids and the somewhat confusion that they have about what is strong, what is good, and what is their identity within that. So now in your shows, which I listen to, the Jewish Story, oftentimes you talk about Israel versus empire, Israel within empire. So we can think about the Babylonians and the Persians and the Greeks and the Romans and others. But sure. What is it? But can we discuss that moment when you're actually living in that? When there's a Rome or a Babylon and there's an Israel and there's this dance between them. There's this thing. Now, what is Israel? This is and here's my lead question too. Is Israel a competing empire, potential empire? Is Israel the virus within all empires that has the moral virus, the moral idea, or the channel idea of bringing God's ideas into this world? Like what is Israel versus empire? Where is this? Is Israel the prophet to the king? Right? Like Israel's a prophecy state and America's a king state. Like where are we in relationship, and how are we supposed to feel when navigating between these two powers, these two energies?
Well, it's a very big question you're asking, and first of all, it needs to be divided into two pieces, which I would call the vision and the reality. Meaning, the reality of our history is that we've always sort of swum against the stream of empire. And that's why we were the indigestible element of the Greco-Roman Empire, as in the Jewish Story we've spoken about many times. Sometimes empire we align with the Anglo-Zionist relationship that sort of was our re-entry vehicle back into our land, but there it broke apart very quickly because the imperial interest there was to rule and our interest was to be sort of to liberate our land. And the American Empire, we've been parallel sort of fellow travelers for quite some time, and yet more and more there's a daylight showing, and that's where the question of the vision comes in. I'm a little bit worried about calling it a virus just because of the association between Jews and disease historically, but
what I mean by virus is this thing
the
that
disruptor.
Comes in, right?
Yeah, the disruptor.
It's also something that yes, it's a disruptor, but I also mean, are we there to write the code, or are we there to ride the code and be inside of it and thereby effectuate it? But we're not the platform. The platform is the current society, the current, in this case, the Western model, the American model, and we're in that. We're in that thing to affect it, bring ideas into. I'll give you an example. I was in New Jersey, which is not a state that I'm oftentimes in, although I have a lot of history with New Jersey. But I find myself more in Texas, New York, California. But I'm in New Jersey, and everywhere there, who's the star of New Jersey? Albert Einstein, because he spent his productive years at Princeton. And there he is. So he's this hero of New Jersey. Now, New Jersey is one of the oldest states in America. I drove through the town of Dover, founded in 1722. And you can hear, you can hear it if you put your ear to the hills. You can hear the Revolutionary
colonial
War.
History.
Right. You can hear it if you're attuned to it, and if you like it, if it's interesting to you. And yet, this hero, the hero is not,
George Washington.
George Washington, or I wanted a better name than that. Somebody a little bit more, New Jersey or something like that. It's this Jew,
Thomas Edison.
Thomas Edison. It's this Jew, Einstein. I don't even know what Edison looks like, right? He's not iconic. Somehow Einstein is iconic. No, Einstein, it's the hair. It's also the personality. It's this guy. He's more, and he also doesn't have Edison's got a more, there's more issues around his personality.
There's complicated backstory there, yeah.
That's right, complicated backstory and competition. In any case, I'm not fighting here this fight. I'm only saying, look at this Jew from Germany. playing his violin, and he's at Princeton talking about who knows what he's talking about, and yet he becomes this iconic thing. Like, is he America, or is he the Jew in America?
No. So in that case, we are Am Levadad Yishkon, and it's important not to forget that, right? And this Bilam, that was the perspective that the nations brought to us. Remember, Bilam was the great prophet of the nations when he said that. And he said, a people that dwells alone. But as we've spoken about, a people that dwells alone, but in the center of the ancient world. Not a people that lives in the Gobi Desert or Antarctica, but on the seam line of the Egyptian and the Syrian empires, or then the Greek and the Persian, and the Roman, the Parthian, and East and West in the Cold War, and now American Iran. We're clearly meant to be a piece which is positioned, but which is never fully absorbed. So yes, as individuals, we go out and we do our business within the empire, but I think what we offer is a very important model of liberty, which comes from attaching the individual to God and bypassing empire. It's one of the reasons that our national history is so important. Like a state is a very important freedom.
But is that what we've called for throughout the ages, to bypass empire? Is that really what we've called for?
I mean, the sages said, if you see Rome built, you'll know that Jerusalem is in ruins. You see Jerusalem built, you know that Rome is in ruins. Or sometimes they say it about Caesarea, but it means the same thing. Is that those two models don't coexist, really. Right. And that's what I meant by the vision. That our vision is not. But
is that true in history? I'm putting that phrase, that famous phrase, in competition with Jewish history. Is Jewish history the kind that we were out there undermining empire?
It's not the same as undermining.
In many ways, we're out there.
It doesn't have to be undermining.
We're out there helping empire flourish.
Yeah, but not as a nation. Mm-hmm. Not as a nation. When Jerusalem is built, that means that the temple is there. It means that there's a widespread consciousness amongst Am Yisrael, which is meant to spread to the nations, that God is king, and that the power of empire is always best offset by two things: God, who stands above it, and the individual peoples, nations, groups who live within it and deny it its absolute power.
But look at America. Yeah. Isn't in many ways the Jewish plug-in a huge part of the blessing of America? In many ways.
Yeah, but not as a nation.
Isn't even the Israeli plug-in to the American empire a part of its blessing?
I'll tell you when the story's over.
No, so far, come on. That's you know what you just answered. You gave it away. You answered as a historian, and I'm asking you to translate history, or you're saying like I'll tell you a history when it finishes happening.
No, I mean it's all well and good to think that what's happening is good, but the reality is a lot of Americans are starting to say Israel's dragging us down. Our entanglements in the Middle East, and like this sort of like alliance with the wrong side, etc. And it's not so clear that it won't be a cause of major rift within America.
And then there are millions of Americans, many of whom I experienced on this trip. I want to tell you just one story, which was like, I had a few of these stories, and I want to write them into like one article, but I had one story, just blew my mind. Uh-huh. We pulled over to some gas station, and there was a guy there selling rugs. This was in Texas. And not like Dallas, Texas, like outside, hour out of Dallas, Texas.
The heartland.
Maybe 2 hours out. Yeah, the heartland of Texas. And there's a guy there, and he's selling Texas rugs, very beautiful quality Texas rugs. When I say Texas rugs, it's got the big star in the middle, the whole Texas star. And he's also selling flags. And he's got like 20 flags on these like little flag poles, and they're all flapping in the wind. I mean, and if you want to see a culture of flags, Texas knows big flags, and he's
big state.
And it's a big state, and he's flapping these 20 or 25 different flags, and we look at the flags, and guess what? There's like this flag of Texas, that flag of Texas, this flag of the United States, this maybe a Confederate flag, I don't know, but you know what else? There was a flag of Israel.
Really?
And I pulled over, and I'm like, dude. One flag that really stands out to me, that's the flag of Israel. So because he's like, why? I'm like, because I'm from Israel. He's like, he takes a flag out of his satchel, whatever his stuff, and he hands me a flag of Israel as a present. And I said to him, thank you very much. I'll take that, but let me buy a flag from you. Let me buy some flags from you. Let me have a Texas flag. So he gives me the plain Texas flag. So I said to him, no, I don't want the plain Texas flag. Give me the one with the M16 and the one that says, come and take it. It's like a phrase, it's like a Texas phrase. There's a backstory behind it.
Cry for my cold dead fingers.
Yeah, come and take it, that type of thing. And I said to him, I'm going to fly this flag in Hebron. And he says to me, well, you should. Israel's a small country, and they want to take it away from you. If you don't fight for it, they will. I was like, and this guy was like chubby, let's just say overweight dude on the side of the road. And like within 2 phrases, he
had you.
He just had he had the thing. He understood what the and he didn't have to fly that flag. It's not because it's good for business, it's because he's with Israel on that level. And so I saw a lot of those kind of people in different places, including in the Northeast as well. And it's okay. So empire. I was wondering about that phrase that you mentioned about Rome and Jerusalem. I was wondering about that.
I think it's just that, like I said, that you have to remember that there's something which stands
because we have a contra phrase. Wait 1 second. Let me give you a contra phrase, which is Yishkon Yafet Ba'alei Shem, right? Like Japheth is going to have his Greco-Roman beauty and all that within the tents of the Semites, right? Like there's a place where there's a harmony between those two energies.
Yes, but the question is whose house? And meaning, like a lot of it comes back to Mikdash, right? And that's the piece where it's a mistake to think that the modern state of Israel right now is what that statement of the sages are referring to. Because I say this with real sorrow, but I think it's true nonetheless, is that the story of the modern state of Israel and much of the culture of the modern state of Israel is not about the Mikdash. Right? So as the state is currently construed, it fits quite well into present empire. But if we had a society that were really built about making our country a dwelling place for God on earth, I don't think that they would match nearly as well.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. It's just very interesting to me. Oh my gosh! And I was on the plane. I didn't get to finish watching this, and I thought the height of irony. I was watching Seth Rogen's movie called American Pickle, which is
really?
About the question of old Judaism versus the new hipster Jew. And I'm watching this on the El Al plane as we're literally landing in the state of Israel. And Seth Rogen is a very popular podcaster, but recently has been bringing in a lot of anti-Israel guests. And I'm like, well, of course, because you're like totally, your whole vision is either European. His whole movie is about either the European ghetto or the hipster Brooklyn Jew. And that's it. You know what I mean? He doesn't have a vision of what you're talking about. He only has a vision of the Jew that fits within the empire. He doesn't have a vision of Jewish power, and Jewish power scares him. He wants to. He's allowing people who would like to tear it down be guests on the show.
Yeah, listen, and Jewish power scares a lot of people, not the least those of us who are trying to figure out how to wield it, right? It's a intimidating thing, but nonetheless, even choosing not to wield power is a decision. It's important to remember that. Mm-hmm. That's right. God has gifted us at a time when you can wield power, and you should choose not to. That's also a decision. It's not like it was 200 years ago where we could talk about power and we could think, but it was really an irrelevancy. Today, it's very relevant.
Right. That's right. I think there's a phrase that I came up with that I think you're going to agree with, a painful phrase, which is when the rabbis say that every generation that did not build the temple is as though they destroyed it. That's true about every generation, but it's truer about our generation.
Well, because we have a lot more of a capability.
Right. That's right. Okay, let's just look through some of the comments. First thing, DR Baker is happy. There you go. And my good friend Jonathan Power says, Shalom Yishai from the home of real Hasidim, Lancaster, PA. I heard you were on the flight to the U.S. with my parents. That's right. And what's really fun about flying also, especially back to Israel, is you're always there with friends. You're always there with friends. It's really fun. Eliyahu Zerubbabel says, your Medina, Israel, has rejected Torah and righteous governance. So he's saying that it's a kind of an unreligious state, and yet even that's not so simple. It's true that Israel was started by secular Zionists, but there's another side, and that side is that Israel today is more and more growing in its connection to Torah, and that's the direction that it's going, and everybody knows that. So, the process is out there. You have any comment on that?
I mean, yes. You could have said the same thing about Ezra's state at the beginning of Shivat Zion.
Right.
Right. And I think that there is an element of the Messianic process that always involves a berur, a clarification, specifically from the side of the physical. Last but not least, I lay the historical process squarely at the feet of the religious Jews of history. Because if the religious Jews of history had picked up and read the writing on the wall, this would be a very different state. So it's all well and good for us to sort of like say, but it's not this, it's not that. We can make it that. It's democracy. There are many tools, and as you're pointing out, people are very open to Torah if it's presented in a way which shows its genuine face and it relates to them and speaks to them. And that can be done without compromising one's ideals.
Right. And I do want to tell you that today, as I came in, my childhood friend Senya Mailer made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael. So I want to wish him congratulations. Him and his family came to the town of Efrat. And so it's very exciting. And people are moving. I could tell you that, where is that? I could tell you that was me. I could tell you that there is definitely talk about Aliyah in the United States. And it's definitely there. And it's also kind of mysterious a little bit because with all the problems in America, again, you're like, well, it looks pretty good, it looks okay. But and I want to say that superficially America looks very good and just fine. Not superficially, there's some kind of discomfort, some kind of lack of internal peace. And I was actually nobody paid me for this, but I was part of a sociological experiment. I spent a week and a half in the home of a Fox TV only, Fox News only, a house, and then I spent a week and a half of a almost ubiquitously an MSNBC house.
Ooh, that's a big conflict.
Yeah. So I was on both sides within a month span.
You got media whiplash.
Yeah. All I can say is facts are not facts. Opinions are. Let's put it this way: if you want, if it's Coke and Pepsi, it's like.
And the talking heads rule the land.
That's right, and they can marshal any amount of facts and any amount of credible people to their side, and one's side is heroes. One side has heroes. Those heroes for the other side are villains, and vice versa. And I thought to myself, I may agree with one side a little bit more, but I definitely think that they're playing us against one another.
Oh, yeah.
And that was something to behold. Okay, Levi Val says shalom, and my friend Steve Eisenberg, who I wanted to see in New Jersey but didn't get a chance to see, and I hope to see next time, says shalom from NJ. Steve, God bless you. Keep up the good work, and Steve is also is a great voiceover man, so we'll see if we can get him to do some work with us as well. And there's somebody wrote here some interesting stuff. Chaim Davis, my good friend, writes, Third Jewish Commonwealth, the Empire Strikes Back. That's right. That's exactly right. And Chaim is, of course, the purveyor of our beloved Prohibition pickle.
Pickle king of the Middle East.
That's right. That's right. And I want to tell you that I came home just now, and in my fridge were very few items. But one was, like the Jewish people, something that can withstand the test of time. And this was no American pickle. Okay, this was no, what's his name? A Seth Rogen American pickle. This was a Judean pickle. Okay,
a Zionist pickle.
A Zionist pickle. That's right. There's this Rogen movie. I didn't get to finish it, but it was definitely thought provoking to me in terms of like, wow, this is like a modern Tevya type of like, it's like
that
a
was the
modern
idea,
version.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't get to. I can't make a judgment on it because I didn't see it to the end, and I do want to see it.
Right.
So Chaim Davis, our good friend from Prohibition Pickle, Yitz Kasowitz from Che Brick says this talk with both rabbis is the best R&R. God bless you with your new house, my friend Yitzi, and also I'm a big fan of J Brick Lego. Check it out if you love Jewish and you love Lego. Put them together, you get J Brick, which is an awesome thing, and so it's so great. I didn't get a chance to see Yitzi either on this trip, but I love his stuff and I have it all over my house, including a mezuzah made out of Lego, full kosher mezuzah made out of Lego in the kids' room. Bruce says, Shalom from the occupied territory of Pennsylvania. But who's occupying who? What's the occupation that you're referring to? Are you talking about the white man who got rid of the... is that what you mean?
Natives.
Or do you mean maybe he means the Jewish person who belongs in the land of Israel but is in Pennsylvania right now? Or I don't know what he means. I got time. You know what? Because of my good friend Matt Mausner, I got a chance, because of his inspiration, I got a chance to spend some time with American Indians. And I say that properly because that's what they call themselves. American natives, they seemingly didn't use the term, First Nations, American and Native Americans. They actually used the word American Indian. But I got to spend some time with the Chickasaw. And that was a lot of fun. You would have enjoyed that. I saw their dancing, their own built museum about their culture. A lot of interesting stuff there. A lot of interesting stuff that also made me think about culture. And then we went to swim in a river of like freezing water in Oklahoma on the Chickasaw Native land grounds. So that was really fun. Marilyn says, Shalom from North Carolina. And says, Bruce, I won't watch any of Seth Rogen's movies. He believes that he will be liked more, in spite of being Jewish, by getting on the progressive Israeli hater bandwagon. This is just Jew hatred dressed up as political theater. Well, I guess there's something to what you said.
Wouldn't be the first one to dress Jew hatred up as political theater. There's a long tradition of that.
Right, but why do? But why? But why? Why not stand with Israel, this beacon of light in this region? Why not stand with Israel as the indigenous people of this land? Why not stand with Israel as the people who keep this spark of the Bible and of biblical morality, godly morality? Like, why stand against Israel? Like, so regressive in my mind. And lastly, what do you think?
I mean, I would say that I think that the existence of Israel demands something of a person, and not everyone is comfortable with what it asks of them.
Right.
Whatever that may be. I don't think it asks the same thing of everyone, but I think the very fact that we are sort of a witness people, and that our history it cuts across the grain of the way in which many very important stories are told. It demands something of us, and that not everyone is comfortable, Jew or non-Jew. Not everyone is comfortable with what it demands of them.
Okay, that leads me, Rav Mike Feuer. First thing, I want to thank you again for joining me today. It's really a pleasure to be with you again. I missed you a lot,
me too.
And I would think, from time to time, WWRMD. All right, what would Rav Mike do, or what would Rav Mike think? Okay,
I don't want us to get stuck into that acronym. That's an uncomfortable place to be.
I was in America a lot, Boy, there are a lot of churches out there. There's a lot of churches out there.
Well, it depends on which part of America you're in. You're in Texas.
Every part. New Jersey. Once you notice it, you realize it's just as much in Jersey as it is in Texas.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, speaking of all that, in my mind, this is like my favorite Torah portion within the book of Dvarim. It's like one of my favorites. Ki titzeh le'milchama. Ki titzeh. Am I right though? Here in Eretz Yisrael, we're in Ki titzeh. Is that right?
We
don't have to think out. Okay.
You are you're good.
Good. So Ki titzeh is a great Torah portion. It's got a lot of amazing. It's a legal codec Torah portion. Codex or codec? I forget. Remind me.
Codex.
Okay, it's got awesome. Right, codec is for audio. Codex is for law. So it's got a lot of fabulous laws that you can learn a lot from. Let's just talk about a few of them. One of them is the great law of sending away the mother bird, or more correctly, don't take the mother bird together with the eggs. If you want the eggs and the chicks, you gotta separate those things out, separate the mother bird away. And if you do this, you live a long life. My mother's explanation, which I gave you a few years ago, was actually an environmentalist one, which is make sure that the world is still renewable. You can't take the mother and the eggs. You got to separate those out. The mother can still have more children, and therefore you have a renewable world. Don't destroy the renewable life cycle. Don't work the earth until it's no longer fertile. Learn to manage your resources in such a way as that they are renewed and replenished by themselves as they want to do naturally.
And I would add there's a sort of moral dimension to that beyond the ecological, sustainable dimension, which is one of the great challenges of humanity is our ability to reach out and take the fruit. I mean, it goes all the way back to Gan Eden, right? That ability to reach out and take the fruit of a process because we can see it, we understand, gives us power, but it also puts us at deep risk for putting ourselves in place of God, as Adam did in many ways. So taking the mother and the eggs, the process and the product together, into a certain way, is a very small but profound repetition of the sin of Adam taking the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Right? There needs to be a sense where we understand that we receive from creation, but we don't control it.
Very good. And another meaning to now. One of the people that fell on this mitzvah, who actually understood it, who instead of giving him life, it gave him death, was Elisha ben Abuya, the famous heretic Acher, who rejected God. The story is that he saw a young boy climbing up a ladder because his father had bid him to shoo away the mother bird, and as he was shooing away the mother bird and doing his father's will, which are both commandments that the Torah tells us gives us a long life, extends our life. The boy fell, the ladder broke, the boy fell, broke his neck, and died on the spot. And at that point, Elisha ben Abuya says, "Leit din v'leit dayan." There is no judgment and there is no judge. And there goes his heresy. We can read that writ large. Somebody sees the Holocaust and says, "The Jews are a chosen people. Chosen for what? There is no God and there's no judge. If he wasn't at Bergen-Belsen, there is no God." But to me, I always want to talk to Elisha ben Abuya and be like, this wasn't about individuals. It's about the nation. The nation of Israel has survived every tribulation, and it keeps going because of our relationship to the past, because of our honor of our fathers and mothers, because of our interest in regenerating generation after generation and not cutting ourselves off from the past, and being connected to God's eternal will. And how did you miss that when you brought it down like a very modern person into an individual, frame and saw that? Okay, go ahead.
I hear it. Yes, and the Torah is very clear. These are individual actions, meaning a nation doesn't do shiloach haken. Remember, part of the whole doesn't do the sending away of the mother bird, right? Part of the whole power of the commandments from the time Adam was given the first command is this very radical stance the Torah takes, which is that we have a meaningful relationship with God because our actions matter as individuals. In many ways, it's the most radical theological move of the entire Torah. And it's another reason for which the world hates us, by the way. Because many people would prefer to believe their actions don't matter because it lets them off the hook for a lot of things. But in this sense, I think that once again, it was the attempt to place oneself in the seat of God. It's like, it's true, the Torah says this, and God made a promise, and that promise is true. It's not the only thing at play.
Mm-hmm.
And to think that we can sit in that seat of judgment, and to think that the world's always going to make sense. I mean, on some level, God tells us this is how the world ought to work. This is how the world can work. It's how the world may work. But the world is bigger than even our experience of it as seen through Torah.
Gwen from Oklahoma. She says, "Good afternoon from Loudoun, Oklahoma, home of the Comanche Nation." That's awesome. And I was just saying before that I was at Chickasaw, and also I saw the Choctaw. Neat stuff, really. There's what to learn from over there. Any pasuk, any verse specifically in this Torah portion that touches your heart, Rav Mike? That there's an issue there that's interesting to you, because there's so much. So I have to ask. Turn it around and ask what you think.
There's 74 mitzvot in this parsha. It's the most of any parsha in the Torah. One of that always speaks to me, and I'm sure that we've spoken about it in previous years, is this critical assertion about just weights and measures.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Meaning, beyond the prohibition of stealing, right? The Torah says you must have just weights and measures. One can very easily say, but you've already been told you're not allowed to steal. This is just a way of stealing. If I'm tipping the scales in my favor, it's just another form of theft. It's deeper than that. What the Torah is saying is that there is such a thing as justice. There's a standard of measure which we must establish and protect and preserve. Beyond the problem of theft, because if you undermine the standard of measure, then you can never actually fix anything. And this is a lot of the problem I see society facing. And once again, is one of the things that we conflict with empire and certainly modern society around. Used to be we conflicted with what's the standard of measure. The Christian empire, the Islamic empire, or the scientific empire all want to say we have the standard, not you Jews. Now we're conflicting over the very idea that there is a standard of measure and that it's not all just relative.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I see it as a very important call, not just to avoid stealing from one another, but to zealously defend righteous standards of measure.
Right. It's interesting because just maybe 2 kilometers as the bird flies from here is the Roman mile markers on the path of the patriarchs, and they stand there. I don't remember 1,400 and something meters between each, and it's a Roman mile, and it's quite accurate. And those guys were great at weights and measures. And throughout time, and for example, our sages are always talking about which shekel are you talking about? Which shekel is considered a more accurate, shekel weight? And the word shekel comes from the word mishkal, which is weight. Yep. And so, weights and measures, and what you're talking about is a moral weight and measure, which is not really so simple, especially in a postmodern world where it's exactly the opposite, which says exactly that there's no standard, but rather everybody's standard has a validity to it.
And that the attempt to claim a standard is an act of violence.
Yeah, I can never articulate that because it sounds so foreign to me, but I understand what that means, right?
And by the way, I think that there's truth to that. There's definitely truth to that.
Right.
But if you're not willing to draw boundaries, then you will never have justice. That's just a price. And we won't be right. Go back to Elisha. We won't be 100% right. But the great art form of the Jewish people is that we know how to fail forward through history. We know how to do the best we can, to progress incrementally, to keep our faith in complex situations, right? And to fail forward through time. And that's why you and I are here having this conversation in Judea, and all the empires that attempted to prevent us to do it. We tell their story as a memory.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just writing down fail forward through time, which I think is a great name for today's show. I wonder what the American empire was like in historical terms. And remember that I'm also, like, inside my personality, I'm also dealing with the Russian Empire, which has been an empire a few times, and its whole like vision for itself is that it's the new Eastern Orthodox, like, Holy Roman Empire, and it wants to continue that thing. And so there's these competing empires around. And so I always wonder, what is Israel? Is it competing to be an empire, or is it competing to be maybe what you're saying, which is it competing to be a moral empire? That's what I always thought. It's like a spiritual superpower.
But even moral empire, I don't like. We're competing to empower individuals to attach themselves to God and to organize themselves in liberty how they want, and not have to give up their freedom for the safety that empire offers.
I wonder if I'm starting to think a little bit more like a Chad Ha'am. I'm wondering if that's like a more Chad Ha'amish like type of thought, which is, look, the Jewish people don't have exactly, it's not that we're like this physical empire that's not going to compete with America or with whatever is the current empire. It's more like we've got this like, right, we've got this like this moral bastion. Not just moral though, that also bothers me because it's not like we're all day long thinking about morality. And I was talking about this with Yehuda Cohen last week. Did the Jewish people know that drip irrigation was going to be one of the things that we're going to bring out into this world, or Einstein's theory of relativities, general and specific, and the other one, or other things that we do. Like, was it obvious that the Jewish people would be a channel for that? You know what I mean? I don't think that you could have read that in the text very clearly. Maybe it's there, but more hidden. But maybe the Jewish people are more like a channel of God's idea into this world. That's what I was then thinking. And so alone, Arthur Rothstein asked me, he's like, what is the goal of the Jewish people? So I said, what is the mission? So I said, I think the mission is to channel godliness and on the higher level to make home for God in this lower domain. So like
always to connect heaven and earth.
Right.
Yeah, as individuals in diaspora and as a people in our land.
Right.
Yeah, well, once they're connected, then there's a flow. And I think as individuals and communities, for sure, in diaspora, that task does not change. We have a unique opportunity and power as a people within our land. I have to depart.
You have to go. That's right. I want to thank you so much for being with us. And actually, the last verse that I wanted to say was, Lo tachsom shor b'disho, do not muzzle an animal when it's like walking around, needs to graze. And the army uses that as like, okay, if there's food on the table, everybody says, Lo tachsom shor b'disho, don't muzzle the animal.
Don't put that out there and tell us we can't eat.
What's that?
Don't put that out there and tell us we can't eat.
That's right. And so therefore you got to go to the next thing, the same thing. Like, look, I'm sure with the show, you got the next thing to do. I want to thank you so much, Rav Mike. Thank you so much for this very enlightening discussion. And I'd love to hear people offer me their thoughts, offer you the thoughts by writing to me at yishai@fleischer.com. And how can they reach you today?
Rav Mike Feuer at gmail.com. It's the easiest way. Or they can find me on Facebook, Rav Mike Feuer, jewishstory.co. Send me the contact.
Right, and you also have a new program that people can sign up for.
That's right, Jewish Story Live. We picked up 1945 to 1967. Just did the first couple of classes every Sunday evening, Israel time, and 1 o'clock Eastern Standard. If you want details, you can send me that email. You can find it there on the Jewish Story or ravmike.com. There are registration links wherever you would go.
All right, highly recommended. Rav Mike Feuer, thank you so much for being with us. And God bless you for Shabbat Shalom. And thanks for welcoming me back home by joining me on the show today.
God bless. I look forward to seeing you face-to-face soon.
All right. God bless you, Rav Mike. And thank you so much for being with me. And God bless all of you out there. Just want to finish off the show by thanking Ben Bresky, Moshe Herman, Yocheved Seidman, and Tabitha and Lou for getting the show out to the world. God bless you guys. And today's show is going to be called To Fall Forward Through Time. Or maybe I'll change my mind. I don't know. Maybe I'll call it. I don't know. Something like Foundation and Empire. I don't know. In any case, we'll figure it out. I do want to hear from you, Yishai@fleischer.com, and it is the Rosh Hashanah season. We're coming right up to Rosh Hashanah, and therefore I want to ask you to start thinking about your Rosh Hashanah donations. Who are you going to support? You're going to support Israel, and by supporting Israel, you are supporting yourself because Hashem loves the land of Israel. His eyes are upon the land of Israel. The fight for the fight for the land of Israel is so obvious since so many want to take it away from us, and that's a sign in itself. And when you support the Yishai Fleischer project through my 501c3 Kuma, you are definitely supporting the show, but also our other efforts, including renovation of places in the land, holy places in the land of Israel. And also the Israel Biblical Highway. So go to yishaifleischer.com, check out the donate page, and make it happen. Because when you support me, you support Israel. When you support Israel, you're supporting the real thing. You're supporting God's vision. Also, of course, Hebron Fund, the Jewish community of Hebron, hebronfund.org. That's the tomb of the forefathers and mothers. That's the place that our roots are. That's the place where people are trying to uproot us. We won't let them do it with your help, hebronfund.org. As I mentioned before, Prohibition Pickle, they're awesome. They make great pickles, and I can't wait. Maybe I could get a delivery before Shabbos because we don't have so much food for Shabbos yet because we just landed. So maybe I could get a delivery from my man Chaim. And also, as I mentioned before, J-Brick, make amazing Jewish Lego, jbrick.com. Check it out. And we have many other sponsors and friends of the show. And I just want to send you a lot of love. The materialism that I promote here on this show is materialism that brings spirituality into your home, and not something that takes away your spirituality. It's something that plugs you in. So Levi writes to me, thank you, Yishai Fleischer, and I want to thank you for helping me start my time back here in the land of Israel strong by broadcasting to you. And so therefore I'm sending you blessings from certainly the land of blessings. I was just out in the world in other places of blessings, but I'm sending you from the heart of blessings, from God's blessings, from where his eyes are upon the land, and from there to the world. I'm sending you shalom. So God bless you. May Hashem's face be with you. Stay tuned, stay in touch, stay connected. Write me an email, yishai@yishaifleischer.com, and have a Shabbat Shalom, and be blessed.